Is this to me speaking? Hello and welcome to the LDP business debate on unemployment and worklessness in Merseyside. My name is Bill Gleeson. I'm the business editor of the Liverpool Daily Post, and I'm going to be presenting this special show for the next half hour, sponsored by Reed in partnership. We're going to be looking at the facts and figures about unemployment in our region. We'll be asking what can be done to tackle the problem. To help me do this, I'm joined by a panel of experts in the field. They are Jack Stopforth, who is the Chief Executive of Liverpool Chamber of Commerce. Next to him, we have Jim Gill, who's the Chief Executive of Liverpool Vision. From Reed in Partnership, we have Tom Miller, who is the firm's Operations Director. And last but certainly not least, we have Claire Murphy, who is both long-term unemployed and runs a campaign group called I'm Not Just Another Statistic. Well, welcome to you all. Thank you very much for taking part in the programme this morning. And you too can take part in the programme by using the live blog, which runs directly next to this webcast on your internet screen. All you need to do to take part, you don't need to register, all you need to do is to write into the box provided, hit the send button, and we will see your comments here in the studio. And a bit later, I shall be reading some of those comments out and putting any questions you have to members of the panel. Well, that's to come, but first, to set the scene for us, my Daily Post colleague Alistair Horton has been out and about, and he's compiled this report.
It's no surprise that unemployment is rising in the recession. The only question now is just how high it will go. Merseyside has been hit by many jobs blows in recent months, including Shop Direct's decision to close this Crosby call centre with a loss of 900 jobs. Unemployment figures in Liverpool's city region have been rising for the past year. More than 56,000 people in the region are now claiming job seekers allowance, a figure which has risen by more than 20,000 in the last 12 months alone. So just how bad will it get here in Merseyside? Economist Peter Stoney says he expects unemployment levels to keep rising well into next year.
We expect the unemployment level to increase to about 60,000 from its current level of 56,000 by the end of this year. And next year we think it will go on increasing into the mid 60,000 level, 65,000 roughly, because it's much harder to bring unemployment down than it is to actually shed labour.
This year, LDP Business has reported on thousands of job losses in sectors from food to finance. Food firm Tulip and chemical giant Croda are shutting their Wirral factories, while banks Barclays and Lloyds axed staff across the region, and high street chains Xavier and Woolworths closed their doors. Just yesterday, Jaguar Land Rover said 300 jobs would be lost at its Halewood plant before the end of the year. Other companies have asked workers to make sacrifices, including pay cuts, to ensure they keep their jobs. But while some industries may be changed forever by this recession and the impact of technological change, North West Development Agency Chief Executive Steve Broomhead says some sectors are doing well and can help the region recover.
There are a number of businesses in this region that are growing very well. Environmental technologies, media industries, the whole area around creative and digital industries, science, biotechnology. All businesses are obviously under challenge, in some cases threat. But there are opportunities for business growth in a number of parts of our region, particularly in Liverpool.
So Peter, what can the public sector and regeneration agencies do to help solve this problem?
The key word for the public sector involvement is facilitate. The public sector needs to facilitate profitable activity in the private sector on Merseyside. It can do this in one way in particular, through building infrastructure which supports private sector, roads, rail, air and sea links.
There may be some signs that the downturn is now slowing, but the spectre of increased unemployment will be hanging over Merseyside for many months to come.
That was Alistair Horton reporting. Jim Gill, the Centre for Cities report published a few months back said that out of all English cities, Liverpool, with the exception of Hull, had the highest rates of worklessness in England. Why is that?
Well, I think those reasons are to do with a long history of economic problems in the city region, Bill, and they don't actually reflect the current position of the city. I think if you look at the rate of increase in unemployment in Liverpool and the city region, yes, it is going up, and it's going up far too quickly, but it's not impacting on this area any worse than it is in other areas. In fact, in many respects, the city's doing better. So the worklessness problem we have, which just doesn't reflect job seekers' allowance claimants, I think is the result of that long-term decline, particularly the latter half of the last century.
So you think that there might be some recent improvement, but as you say, in the longer term, the worklessness problem remains, and you mentioned the latter half of the last century. In fact, for the whole of the last half of the last century, since World War II, Liverpool has had assisted area status, and that means billions of pounds of, most recently, European money has been ploughed into the local economy, and yet the problem of high rates of unemployment persists.
Yeah, and that money's gone into some investment which has started to change the basic structure of the economy. For too long we didn't take advantage of Liverpool's natural assets, which mean that the visitor and tourism economy can flourish. We didn't take advantage of the cultural assets. We haven't built on the strength of the knowledge assets in the city. All that is changing. The worklessness issue is the result of a long period when a lot of that money has been spent not particularly well focused.
Jack Stopforth, the Chief Executive of Liverpool Chamber of Commerce, got your finger on the pulse of what the private sector is thinking and doing. Tell me this, we heard there in Alistair Horton's report, Peter Stoney, the economist, saying that he expects unemployment to get a bit worse. Do you think it will get much worse before it starts to get better in our area?
I think Peter Stoney's estimates are pretty accurate, to be perfectly honest. I think we do a very comprehensive quarterly survey of chamber members. We just had the Q2 results in, and they're actually showing some very, very guarded grounds for optimism. But the trend over the last 8 consecutive quarters has been negative, and certainly in the last quarter and the quarter before then, we had a great many companies who were very sadly, but we're talking about slowing down any planned recruitment that they had, or in some cases actually shedding labour. Now those intentions won't yet have materialised in terms of actual unemployment because of consultation periods and notice periods and the like. But even though we're beginning to see a degree of optimism returning to elements of the economy, that unemployment, which is a notoriously lagging indicator, by the way, has still yet to hit us.
And Tom Miller, as Jack said there, unemployment, it's risen for, I think, 8 consecutive quarters, 2 years really. You, in your branches of Reed and Partnership, you must be seeing a lot of people applying for jobs, and yet your customers who provide those jobs, the companies that you work for, they must have fewer and fewer vacancies. How are you getting things to match these days?
Yeah, I think there are definitely two sides to the equation. We are seeing more customers coming into our branches and customers asking for our help. We offer services additional to what Job Centre Plus offers. Generally speaking, we work with longer term unemployed people, so people have been unemployed for 18 months or more. We're seeing more of them, particularly more young people coming through, and they are feeling that it is more difficult for them to engage in the labour market. They're less motivated to job seek than they were previously. They're finding competition for the vacancies that are available more difficult.
Yeah. If I ask Claire Murphy from the campaign, I'm not just another statistic, you are yourself long-term unemployed. The long-term unemployment problem, as opposed to the monthly rises, just how hard a nut is that to crack on Merseyside, do you think?
I think Merseyside's just an innovative city, it always has been, and instead of seeing us unemployed people, us long-term unemployed people as being the problem, use us as the solution. We are the ones who live this life. We are the ones who have the answers. We're not, it's having long-term employed people to fix the unemployment status of this city seems so like not common sense. This I'm Not a Statistic campaign is head by unemployed people, and we are going to take this now, and it's to use our dreams, our inspiration.
What sort of people get caught up in long-term unemployed? Single mums, for example?
Well, the single mums, I mean, with it, we've made an amazing film, and it ranges from persistent young offenders, we've got domestic violence, we've got mental health spectrum, we've got life-termed jail, a man who's been in jail for half his life, who's come out and really want to change how he sees this. We've got this unemployment. We are the answer if we can, the people on the grassroots
but you're not getting the jobs, are you? Or at least they're very hard to come by. Jack, why is business not so keen on cracking this particular nut of long-term unemployment in Merseyside?
With respect, Bill, I don't think that's the right question. I think that there's. I think Claire's made some really valid points. I think there's an awful lot more we can do with the unemployed as a resource, with the full.
But it tends to be the same people who are unemployed, long-term unemployed.
Well, that's not really true, is it? That's not really true so much. I mean, we've got such inspiration in this city, so many people in this city. We have got so much to offer. Maybe the thing is they've never really had a voice and been listened to. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe these long-term unemployed people have never really been heard. So now maybe it's time for change. Maybe it's time now that the people who are writing these policies listen to us, hear our voices.
I think Claire's hit a nail on the head there. It is not the responsibility of the business community to deal with the social aspects of employment.
Okay.
Companies will recruit when they need to, when they're in expansive mode. They will have to lay people off in order to survive long term. The consequences of that, I'm afraid, are essentially the responsibility of the public sector.
Well, what is it like to be unemployed in Merseyside? The Daily Post's Alex Turner has been out to Garston's Job Centre Plus to find out for us and has compiled this report.
Job Centre Plus is operating at the sharp end of the unemployment debate, trying to match an increasing number of unemployed people with a decreasing number of job vacancies. A job seeker, a recruiter, and first Gary Fogs of Job Centre Plus told me what's on offer here at the Job Centre Plus in Garden.
And with the economic downturn, we've put more provision in place to support those people who have not used our services for a long time, or indeed have not used our services at all. For instance, we've got provision to help professional and executive people who are now becoming unemployed, who would not normally come to a job centre, because of the economic climate, find themselves having to go through the Job Centre Plus environment. We have specialist recruitment agencies who can support those people into work quickly, and the referral will come from the Job Centre Plus advisor into those specialist recruitment agencies.
Over the last 2 years, obviously, we've hit the recession. Times are hard. We're seeing more and more applicants for each position. We're getting a lot of skilled workers now, looking for minimum wage jobs, which we didn't have before. So the calibre of person for each position and the number of applicants is obviously, we're getting a better calibre, and obviously a lot more people applying for individual positions.
Well, it's obviously, I've been searching online through the job centre, word of mouth as well, but I've also been looking for courses, and I've also tried, I've applied for college in September to be a professional chef. Hopefully in 2 years' time when that's finished, hopefully all this recession and everything else will be over, so it'll stand me in good stead to have another career.
Well, that was Alex Turner reporting from Garston. Jim Gill, if I could ask you, we heard the unemployment figures out yesterday. There's 281,000 more people unemployed in Britain, taking the total to 2.3 million in the last quarter. That's a big leap. And earlier in the package done by Alistair Horton, he was talking about Shop Direct. Now, there seems to be two types of unemployment going on at the moment. One, due to the ups and downs of the economy. The other, like Shop Direct, very much companies perhaps taking the opportunity of the downturn to make big changes and permanent changes to the way they're running their business. What do you think is happening? Are we getting more of that sort of permanent change, or is the unemployment due to the ups and downs of the economy?
well, I think the obvious answer, Bill, is probably getting both. I think, change always leads to more change. So if companies are, they're always under pressure on their cost base. Now got very strong demand pressures. So they're reducing the cost base. And at the same time, some of those companies, certainly those companies with the right level of resource and understanding, will look at the way they work overall. And that just seems to me the way in which business works generally. It works, more obviously in a recession because you see the effects, but it's doing that sort of analysis all the time, it seems to me. Certainly,
but companies are very much taking the opportunity to bring in big permanent changes. Is that your experience, Jack?
Yeah, I think it's what I would hate to suggest is that there's a degree of kind of cynicism about that. There isn't. It's I mean, Jim's absolutely right. The whole point of being in business is to make more for less. The whole point of being in business is to make sure that your costs are always under control and you're getting the maximum productivity, the maximum profitability that you can for yourself, for your staff, for your shareholders, for the wider community.
And the car industry in particular, Jack.
Well, it's not when Tata Motors bought Jaguar, for example, they didn't buy it with a view to a pending recession and an opportunity to streamline what they're doing. Sure. What they've all of this streamlining and changes and cuts that they've made have been forced upon them by the economic circumstance. For what it's worth, I believe that they're still there for the long term.
I think there's a change in the labour market that we have seen in the work that Reid does with employers insofar as I think increasingly employers that have vacancies are structuring those vacancies as part-time or 0-hour contracts. So employers are looking for greater flexibility from their workforce than used to be the case, and that may be a permanent change.
And indeed, we're seeing a lot of that, for example, in the car industry, where people are, where employers are saying to their workforce, look, we could lay 10% of you off, or the alternative is that we have the whole factory shut down for 10% of the time and everybody gets paid 10% less. That means the pain is shared. It also means the skill sets are there for when the economy comes back.
Absolutely, and we see a lot of that happening with employers. Reid's running a campaign called Keep Britain Working, which is essentially trying to work with businesses across the UK, including Liverpool, to try to encourage employers to think about alternatives to actually making their employees redundant, and some of the examples that you cite are good ones for that.
Claire, I'm Not Just a Statistic campaign, very much born in part out of your own personal experience of being unemployed for, was it 20 years or so? Yeah. If you're unemployed for the long term, what sort of practical steps can you take to get yourself back into work?
Well, the practical steps, it's just, to go into the job centres and to go into these places now and as a long-term unemployed, you're going into these people and they're just shutting people down dead with the dreams and the hopes. They're going in and it really is hard to engage with the staff.
So they come out of a job centre feeling pretty disillusioned and they come to you.
Pretty downtrodden and pretty worse. So the difference now is with this, our aim is to go into these places, into the job centre pluses and into these companies and inspire them. Use the unemployed people from the cities, the ones that have got a voice, the ones that have got the solutions, to go into the job centre pluses, to go into the DWPs and inspire the staff.
Things like, for example, voluntary work, is that a step into...
It's an amazing step back into the real world. It's hard to ask someone who's completely dead inside to do a CV. Yeah. It's hard to ask somebody who's been locked away in their own existence for such a long time to go into a job club, or they haven't got no life inside them. So until you can really give them that life back, you can't really give them the will to work.
I think that's a very important point, Bill, because what you see in the rise in the numbers of people on job seekers allowance that gets translated into unemployment rates is actually people who are in the market. It's the churn that we talked about. So the increase in numbers is a lot of people getting jobs, a lot of people losing jobs, and the balance is the increase. And what Claire's talking about is people who haven't ever been part of that churn. It's that missed potential.
It's the full,
in the city.
You've got a full world of people who have been lost and forgotten about, and quite happily to do that. because they haven't had the will to work, to live, never mind work.
And Jim, are there parts of the city more affected by this long-term unemployment than others?
There are areas, there are wards in the city, particularly in the north of the city and Speedgast and that sort of thing, where you get bigger concentrations of this. You get particular groups, some women who are trapped in the home, or young people, or immigrant communities.
Do we think this is a city thing, or do we think this is part of the country too? I mean, we're looking at Liverpool as like, we are the ones who've got a voice to really
There are
change
undoubtedly other cities with similar problems, and
this
indeed
is
Hull has a worse one.
Yeah, you know, we're looking at Liverpool and like, we've got worklessness and we've got this and we've got that. We've got so much to offer.
Here we are in Liverpool, and Jim, your agency is responsible for economic development in Liverpool. Claire there mentioning how disillusioned people can feel when they come away from the job centres. What sort of initiatives are the economic agencies
I can't know anything about the job centres, but and I think job centres is probably the wrong vehicle for to tackle this issue. There's actually an awful lot going on, and what goes on comes out of those communities and individuals in those communities themselves. But there is a Vision, for example, manages the resources that go into a number of programs that assist local agencies that are helping local people first of all identify the potential, and then learn to make use of it. And as you said, that doesn't have to be what we normally term economic work. It can be voluntary work in the community. It can be a community business, it can be individuals recognizing that they can run their own business.
Tom, if I could ask you this question. Obviously you see a lot of different sorts of companies using your services. Are there companies in particular sectors? Are there particular, whether it's, won't be retail, will it, but or maybe tourism, you tell me, where are the jobs at the moment, if there are any out there?
Yeah, there definitely are jobs out there. There is more competition for them, but there are some sectors where there are still a significant volume of good paying jobs. Care sector is a good sector where we're seeing quite a lot of growth. The hospitality sector is holding up much better than people would
By hospitality you mean?
Hotel, leisure, restaurant business, bars, that type of sector is holding up far better than people expected. And indeed, even in retail in Liverpool, retail sector with the investment Liverpool One is actually holding up better than many analysts had predicted.
So Jack, your surveys, as you mentioned earlier, 8 consecutive quarters of declining optimism. When do you think business, the private sector, might want to start recruiting again? When will things pick up?
Well, we're seeing a slowing down in the decline. It sounds like cold comfort. Indeed, it is cold comfort, frankly. But with the last quarterly survey gave us 1 or 2 indications that export orders were starting to recover, that domestic sales were starting to hold their own. There were fewer companies than in the previous quarter who were talking about laying people off. There were more companies than in the previous quarter talking about recruitment. So there are some very, very small indications that things have already turned. So it's not quite true to say that it's a precipitous decline, but what worries me is that we're in what some economists call a W recession, that we will begin to see the beginnings of a recovery, not just locally but nationally, only then to be hit by the consequences of facing government of the bailout of the banks. And that can only mean huge cuts in public spending, both capital and revenue, and it can only mean increases in taxation, whether direct or indirect. And I worry that the impetus which we're just beginning to see in the economy might not be given sufficient time properly to bed in before we're hit by these additional downturns. So forgive me, and I should stress this is a personal view rather than a chamber or a British Chambers of Commerce view, because they're rather more sanguine than I am. But I have real concerns that we're going to see a second wave.
Okay, well, we'll have to see if that happens, Jack. But the live blog has been running for some 20 minutes now, and so it's time to take a few of your questions. Claire, we have a question from a Claire from Crosby, and she's particularly keen, and if I put this one to you, Tom, she's particularly keen to hear what sort of advice you would give to somebody who is long-term unemployed.
Really, I think it's about recognising the talent within you. Much of the stuff that Claire talked about is really valid. You've got to recognise that you've got lots of skills to offer. even people who have no qualifications can, with help such as we provide, really produce excellent CVs and really good preparation for interview. I think you have to accept that competition for jobs is going to be tougher than it used to be. So preparation of your CV and preparation for interview is absolutely key, but you've got to keep participating, you've got to keep sending out your CV, and you've got to offer yourself to employers for work trials or voluntary work or whatever, really to prove yourself in terms of the skills that you've got.
And Claire, would you add to that?
Well, if you're long-term unemployed, I think to get back into the world, get back into your day-to-day society first, before you think about putting yourself in an office or in a...
And by that you mean, what, go out, meet friends?
Just socialise, voluntary work, use the skills that you've used to survive life, and put them back into the day-to-day running of the...
And Jack, what would a private sector employer be looking for from somebody who, perhaps like Claire, has had been out of work for many years?
Attitude, good positive attitude, a belief that that life has more to offer them.
Do you think they'd give such a person a look at?
Oh, absolutely. Companies are very keen indeed to engage on this social agenda. What they can't do is actually run their businesses in the present circumstances and be held accountable, if you like, for the issues of the unemployed.
So right,
but where they can help, corporate social responsibility isn't just a catchphrase. It is actually something which is embedded, especially in small businesses. Most small businesses understand exactly what it's like to struggle, understand precisely what they need to do to survive, and they can relate, therefore, to people in that situation.
Time for another question. We have Mandy from Old Swan, who's demanding to know what more the government can do about it. Jim, what more can you're publicly funded, you're put together by, you're run by the Liverpool City Council, really, aren't you?
No, I'm not run by the Liverpool
City
Council.
Well, I mean, they've certainly got an involvement. Okay. You're definitely public sector one way or another, Jim. Well, what can the public sector and government do?
Peter Stoney talked about public sector facilitating, and in very general terms, that's what's been happening in Liverpool for the last 10 years. You'd say longer, because all that money's been pouring in. But Jack raised a very valid point before, because we are actually in a situation now where the public finances are really very constrained. So I don't see the way in which some of the major infrastructure type projects that Peter maybe had in mind are going to come through. Certainly not at the same level as they have been in the past. My general point to government would be to stop inventing initiatives of your own, and actually, where there are resources, let local organisations deliver them, because it's local organisations that actually understand what they're required.
Well, we'll go to one last question. It's yes. Why aren't we coping as well as the rest of the country might be coping at the moment? Tom, do you have a view on that?
Well, Jim said earlier that there's a legacy issue in Liverpool which goes back for decades, and generational worklessness causes people to lose hope and lose ambition. And one of the challenges that we have in Liverpool is really to raise hope and ambition in people and to get them to actively participate. There's also an issue in Liverpool about skills levels, and the skills, the educational attainment and qualification level of the Liverpool workforce is lower than national averages. And whilst in recent years we've seen Liverpool schools really improve their level of educational attainment, that's a legacy issue which again we have to address.
Okay, well, I'm afraid that brings us to the end of the programme. Time's flown, but that is it. The live blog does continue, though, and you can continue taking part with the debate online for at least another half hour, so please do that. There will also be a full report of this morning's discussion in the next edition of the LDP Business Magazine, which is published on the 28th of July. That's a week on Tuesday. And it'll be inside the Daily Post, so don't miss that on the morning of the 28th of July. Well, thank you very much for taking part in the live blog. Thank you to all of my studio guests for joining us this morning. From me, Bill Gleeson, and the rest of the team here at the Daily Post, goodbye.
Thank you, Sue.
Right, good. I hope my mics are down.